have something that I hope you'll be able to help me with.
Yep.
And for that, I'll need to start screen sharing. So this app, if I run just, I have a couple of builds to run. A couple of commands to run. If I do build, all just build does, it does yarn, right? It says install yarn, and it's just install, yarn install, yarn run build. I'm running 2 commands. They all run locally. I'm going to build it now. And because this ran before, I mean, it should be a little bit quicker, right? I have no dependencies to install, but it still takes maybe up to 10 seconds to finish the build. Cool. The next thing which I'm going to do once this build is finished is I'm going to package what was built. I'm going to put it in a container, and I'm going to put it in the container using my local Docker. I say local Docker, but in reality, what's happening is Docker is actually running on a Linux host, which is on the same LAN. It's connected via wire 10 gigabit, so it's really, really fast. And I'm connecting to it via Tailscale. So this is what this IP means, right? So it works the same regardless where I am, just that at home it's much quicker. Okay, so just package, and I'm going to tap this, package push on local Docker. Local Docker, Docker build X, build, and the directory that was generated locally, the out, that's what gets taken in. It's a very simple Nginx. We can see here the copy out. It just puts it in an Nginx container. Really, really simple. Took about 15 seconds. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to run the same package command, but with a little variation. Package on remote Docker. The command which it runs behind the scenes does an NSC build. It creates a build cluster, and I know that was fast. I know you're not surprised, but others may be. That took seconds, right, to spin up, and it took 9 seconds. So actually, building and pushing the same thing on a remote instance that had to be spun up, it's slightly faster than building it locally. And that's a bit surprising. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting it to be slower, especially since the instance did not exist. The instance had to be created.
Behind the scenes, just to add a bit of context, we created an instance, as you're saying, to run a subset of the Docker build kind of system, so build kit, and that is kind of wired with our cache volumes. But all of that is set up to be as low latency as possible. So cloning a cache volume, for example, is something in the order of 50 to 100 milliseconds. And so even though everything seems like it's being created from scratch, and it is indeed created from scratch, it's kind of very optimized for very low latency. And then there's something that is helping you here, that the push was done from our high performance network because of your remote build.
Yes, exactly. That was the other thing. Like you still need to push these things somewhere. So let's say that maybe building locally is fast, but then even if you have a fast internet connection, that will still take a few seconds. While if you're already in the data center where the registry is, this is going to be, in this case, 0.3 seconds. Actually 2.1 seconds, pushing layers, exporting layers. So this will be quicker. And before, if I look there, pushing layer, 6, 7 seconds. Right? So, and all these seconds, they add up. Cool. So the next thing which I'm going to do, I'm going to run a preview. NSC run, and I was really happy to see this thing. NSC run, I give it the image, and I do the publish. So if I look at this app, it's not loading. Why is that?
I think you might have copied the wrong thing. Could it be? Or
so this page isn't working. HTTP error 502. There's a 502 error. There's something wrong with this command.
No, there should be nothing wrong with that command.
So let's look at the instance.
Yeah.
And this will make it easier to see what the problem is.
There we go. Image pool failed. The reference that you're using doesn't exist because you didn't use any. There's 2 flags. There's one that is that you can give a local relative reference to NSCR for your workspace, and another one where you need to pass the whole image reference. So you need to pass nscr.io / basically what was the output of build.
Yeah, that's right. So That took me a while to figure out. You're right. That's why there's a preview too. It does exactly the same thing. It does the nscr.io. But it was a bit surprising. Like the whole
Yes.
thing, I was expecting it to work. I clicked on the link. What 502, what's going on? And then I remembered, maybe I should click here. I should click on the instance to see what's happening there.
Yeah. So I will say that this is a bit of, it's actually a deliberate design decision. We wanted, we kind of went back and forth on, should we wait until we know that it's running to tell you? Or should we just set up things so that they are running and then you can check if there is an error?
Yeah.
So you can see that we opted for the latter. And the reason is very often the act of waiting, you lose pipelining. You could have been doing something else while behind the scenes, everything is just starting. So we optimize for pipeline. Click on the link, and when you click on the link, it's already running.
Yeah, got it. So there is a wait flag, by the way, which I have used and I have looked at. But the problem is, again, the container isn't starting, and I don't know why the container isn't starting.
This is the wait flag is a little bit tricky. It requires some something to be configured for readiness, and I think probably in the way that you set it up, it doesn't understand readiness. That's the problem.
And how would I be able to configure readiness in the context of an image which I'm pushing?
Yes, it's a bit of an internal protocol. That's why wait is documented, but it's still a little bit of an internal feature.
I see. Okay, cool. So control C that. Obviously, if I was to maybe push this with the wait flag, I'm wondering if this works. Starting, so I'm pushing the same image again. And I know this image is correct, but I think you're right. I don't have anything implemented for the readiness. So wait doesn't know what to do here. Cool. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. So we did the preview 2. This was the preview 2 that actually worked. So if I click on the instance, I can see that the instance is running and everything seems to be healthy. That was like the initial startup, and now it's just like idling, right? Waiting for something to happen. So if I click on the URL, this was really cool. I can see the application. Nice. So in this URL, what is RD1? What does that mean?
That's one of our regions. It's the Chicago region.
Okay. And how can I change what region the application gets deployed to? Is there a way of choosing that? Because for example, I would choose for it to be in Europe. Maybe there's a way to see the regions, to see what I can select.
Yeah, so you cannot change it yourself. And it's a very practical reason, is we think of our capacity as global. And we, as much as possible, try to kind of do capacity planning on your behalf and use available capacity where it exists.
Cool. So the application is running. So coming back here, so this is like the whole thing. So what I'm wondering is, how long does it take me to push on the remote Docker and then deploy with a preview? So all this, right, the app is built locally. We've seen how long that takes is not very difficult or time consuming. But what I'm wondering is, how long does it take to build the image, in this case, and get a preview environment up and running? And the answer is there, 7 seconds.
And you can click the URL, the second URL. I think that's kind of the litmus test that it actually has something serving
there you go,
over there.
And it's a different one. So these get always a new one. So that's really, really cool. The last thing is cleanup. Right? If we do an NSC list, we have a bunch of instances running. So all I did is implement this clean remote, which does basically an NSC list, and it does like an awk, and then it's like NSC destroy force. Is there a way to maybe destroy instances, like many instances all at once?
All at once, no. But you can do NSC list -o JSON. That would probably make some of this a little bit easier. And all the instances, they have a duration. So when you say NSC run,
yes,
it gets a default duration of probably 4 hours for you.
Yeah.
But you can also say -- duration 5 minutes. You can say dash duration 30 minutes. You can say dash duration 8 hours.
Yeah.
So that's, you're using it in the way that it was made for. So it's to create on-demand preview environments that are just running containers. You decide what you want.
Yeah.
You specify what are the ports that you want to expose. You get URLs out of them. But even the ingress is more sophisticated than just this example. You can also do TLS pass-through. You can also do TLS termination with TCP, like for custom protocols. You can terminate TCP connections into the container. So it doesn't have to be HTTP.
Got it. Okay. That's very helpful. So once again, there was a point we're just trying to make. So push on remote Docker and preview to, I'm running it again just to see that it wasn't just a one-off. In all my tests, it was sub 10 seconds, like 6, 7, thereabouts. This is what my current workflow looks like. So if I do a deploy, it does flyctl deploy. That is it. And then flyctl, because this app runs on fly by default, it handles everything else, the building, the pushing. So let's see how long that takes. Do you want to take any guess?
I love Fly. I think they're a great company, and I'm sure they try.
Me too. That's why I'm using them. So I'm still using them and like the whole thing. But this is what my experience is today. And I'm wondering, how can I improve it using namespace, right? Because namespace will build it. I mean, I would need to, for example, push it to Fly, and then Fly will take care of like the whole like scheduling and the blue-green deployment and all that stuff. But the namespace experience so far is making me wonder if in the future, I would be able to do this on namespace entirely.
We have an infrastructure that can serve a lot of different use cases. We have multiple people asking us about more robust previews, on-demand previews. So that's probably the first thing that we're going to do. Like right now, you had to do NSC run, and then it kind of keeps the instance around for a little bit of time. There's a upcoming NSC run kind of deferred that kind of installs a rule, and then when you interact with that URL, it actually does the creation on demand. And so you don't even have to, you can even put a URL into your PR, for example, and when someone hits that URL, that's when they're going to be able to interact with it.
So that's scaled down to 0, right?
That would, automatically scales down to 0.
Nice.
So it starts at 0, it can go to 1, potentially n, and then it scales down to 0 as well. So one of the things, just to be transparent, we focus a lot on throughput more so than latency. And when you're serving applications, you want to be kind of in locations that are closer to your users. I think there will be a time where we have enough locations where we're automatically closer to users. But when I think about how we plan our deployments today, like where we actually have machines, where are the data centers that we're using, we're still very much optimizing for throughput. So for example, we went through that. You did an NSC run. We have regions that are closer to you, but still we placed you in Chicago because it just happens to be the best decision from a throughput perspective right now based on the fleet conditions. If we would want to serve that for a user-facing application, that decision would be different.
I see. So for me, with that deferred feature, if I was to put a CDN in front, which I definitely would, for all the static assets, it would be very fast. Ideal, the CDN will do the caching, the distribution, all that stuff. And for the dynamic part, it will be fast enough. Mm-hmm. Not to mention that there's like a couple of other services involved, like authentication, authorization. So this is, it's not like a self-contained app. It makes use of different services, third-party services. And in that case, they are closer to where the users are. So a lot of the dynamic stuff already happens externally. So those services handle that part. And all I would need to worry is like the application itself, like the dynamic requests Right now it has none. When it will have some, it will be very simple because I can again push to external applications as much as possible. So just being able to run this for more than 3 hours, so I can run this with a scale down to 0 because the startup, I'm assuming, is going to be nice and fast.
Yeah, we'll definitely be in touch, Gerhard. I'll let you know. The deferred kind of start that scales to 0, that's coming because it's important for previews. We want folks to not have to have like a script or a workflow that they need to start in order to start their preview. We want them to be able to say, here's a definition of my preview, and then you just interact with it, whether you open a browser to open the URL, or maybe you're sending an API request, whatever it is, you can do that. There's another thing that right now, we're very security conscious. So by default, and we didn't see that, but that preview is actually checking that you're logged in. And
Yes.
if you wouldn't be logged in, you would have like a login page in front.
Okay, let's try that. Hang on, let me get the preview up and running. So that's one. Because this won't take long. I'll need to sign out before I go to it.
So you go to Gerhard on the top.
There.
Yeah, and then
sign out.
Yeah.
Boom. Okay, so I'm out. I will close everything to the right. Close tabs to the right. So I have only one running. So now I'm signed out. And if I go to this URL now, yes.
There we go.
Yep, cool. Authorize, must first sign in order to authorize access to previews. Okay, is it possible to make previews public?
Yes, so that's a feature that we have. We by default don't. We kind of lean towards. We assume that you don't want the previews to be accessible rather than accessible. That's behind the plan flag, but I can enable that for us to try it out.
Yes, yes, please. That would be helpful.
Let's do that.
There we go. 9S8.
So one thing is, because of how our system works, this is a rule in the instance. So you'll have to create a new instance. So we'll have to create a new preview. And there's an additional flag that you need to pass because, again, by default, everything is constrained. It requires authentication. And so after publish or before, you need to say -- ingress.
So let me go to preview. Now we can actually fix it. Okay, yes.
And so you say -- ingress. So that's to pass ingress rules. And then you'll have to quote. You'll say star or 8080 or like your port basically, but you can just say star equals noauth altogether.
Noauth.
Altogether.
One word.
Yes, one word.
Noauth.
Yeah.
Okay, noauth. Good.
You could also have specified the port. You basically telling us that this port doesn't require authentication, but with star you say all ports.
Yeah, got it. And there you go. We can see the ingress, noauth. And I think I want to maybe sign out. Do we check if this actually works without the auth? Maybe do a curl request?
You can, or you can an incognito. Yeah, you can also curl. You can also do incognito.
So if I do this, basically I want to see I'm getting a 200, right? So I definitely not sign in on the command line, and we can see everything. Nice. That is very nice.